Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Shattered Silence, Stories of Recovery and Resilience. My name is Jory, and today we have our guest, Lindsey Hackford. She is a domestic violence survivor and advocate. I do want to let everyone know that we have a trigger warning just because we are going to be talking about domestic violence. So we're just going to get into it. I feel like we should just start talking about yourself. Talk about you before just you by yourself, before your relationship. How were you before?
I don't remember a ton of that time. Unfortunately, my trauma has caused quite a bit of memory loss, which I do get a little bit emotional about sometimes. But I think that's just because I met my abuser when I was 16. I met him when I was a baby, and I thought that I knew all of the things. Some of the things about me that are just kind of my core who I was. I'm the oldest of 4 children, and I was raised in a very religious household. My family is still very Mormon, and that's not something that I still practice. I do believe that my upbringing and the things that I took away from that religion were really toxic to my relationship with my abuser. I don't think that happens for everyone, but that was definitely my case. And I was a competitive dancer. I started that when I was 3. And when I met him, he was really good at picking up on all of the things that I didn't see that he was picking up on, if that makes sense. And so when I met him, he was really quick to share trauma with me. He told me, so he was the youngest child. And he told me that his birth dad had given up him and his siblings when he was young, and that he had been adopted by his birth dad, or by his stepdad, and his birth dad was someone that he was really in fear of. And he didn't really go into a lot of detail as to why, but I just always remember feeling like he was really scared of him. And I remember one time when we were dating, he showed up at my house and he knocked on the door and was like shaking. And I was like, what happened? And he was like, I just went to a job interview and it was my birth dad. And he was like, now he's going to know where we're at and he's going to find us. And like, I didn't really have a lot of context, but I was like, oh my heck, like what can I do to protect you?
Yeah.
And so this, I think now looking back, I can see when I didn't have a lot of friends and I wasn't super close to my family. I've always kind of felt misunderstood. I was told that I was a lot to handle, or I was a lot to deal with, which I am. But when he came, and so when these people in my life that I did have would say, things feel off, this feels weird, I was like, well, you just don't understand what he's been through. You don't understand him. I know what he's gone through. And so it immediately gave me this thing that I just defended and could dismiss any warning that anyone could have given me. And so growing up, when I didn't clean my room or when I didn't do my chores, my mom, there was nothing I cared about outside of dance. And so she would say, like, if you don't do this, I'm not going to take you to dance. Well, he caught on to that very early and was like, that's how they're controlling you. You need to regain your power from your parents. And I was like, you're right, I do. And I did feel really controlled, but what teenager doesn't, like, and so at that time it did feel unfair, but I was a teenager. I can see now as a parent, maybe I wasn't getting as much of an explanation as I wanted, but the parenting tactic was fine.
Right.
But I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. I need to regain my power.
Yes.
And so one day in the middle of competition season, I was like, nope, I'm not going. And what are they going to do? Carry me out? Like, no. And so I didn't go. I quit my team in the middle of the year, something I had done since I was a child. I was very close to my dance teacher. I just didn't go.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is my moment.
Yeah.
And I regret that so much.
Yeah.
It's something that I still, like, I think about all the time. I want to go to, like, the gym and go to a dance class or something because it is a part of me that I miss. I liked performing. I liked expressing myself in that way, but there is so much sorry, here I go. I already feel like I'm going to cry.
You're okay.
There's so much trauma about how I quit that it feels like I can't step back into it.
Yeah.
And I really hope that it's something that I can overcome one day, but for right now, it feels big.
Yeah, seriously.
So, I met him when I was young, and it just it started really, really early. So
it's like hindsight, you know, you look at things, you're like, oh, I didn't see that, but you're a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
You're a teenager.
No, and
You
why
have
would
no
I know
idea.
that? Yeah. And so, I don't know. There were a lot of things that I can see now that I didn't realize were just things that were going to evolve when we got married, and I dismissed a lot of things. In our relationship, he told me that he needed to date other girls because I had been able to date other people, but he hadn't been able to experience that. And if we were supposed to be together, that I just needed to let him go and figure it out, and we would end. And I was like, yeah, you're totally right. And so I let him, and it was something that he was very open about. Would date girls in front of me. This happened for years.
Yeah.
I met him when I was 16. This evolved. When I was 18, I moved out. The day I turned 18, I moved out, moved in with him. And we were working at the same company at the time. And he would meet girls at the mall and bring them up to the food court and have lunch with them while I'm working at a kiosk in the food court. And then we would go home together. So these girls didn't know about me, but I'm like, oh, I'm just waiting it out. Showing him that I am going to be by his side, supporting him. And so eventually, he came to me and he was like, I'm not physically attracted to you, but I know you're going to take care of me the best. And I was like,
oh
I am.
God.
I will. I'll take care of you the best. I didn't even catch the first thing. Blew right past that.
Yeah.
Because, and this is one of the things that I attribute to my religion, is the only goals I had in life were being a good mom and a good wife. That was it. I had no ambition. I didn't have a career that I was working towards or dreams that I had for myself outside of being the best mom and wife that I could be. And so the fact that he saw that I was going to care for him, that was where all my worth was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, absolutely, I will.
Yeah, I'll be that person. Yeah, I'm right there.
So I said, okay.
Yeah.
So we got married. We got married when I was 19, I think. And I got pregnant with our oldest when I was 20. So it was very quick, and that's pretty common in Utah.
And at this point, were you kind of distant with your family because of your relationship?
Yeah, there was always tension with them. They didn't like him. His parents and my parents didn't get along. There were a couple of interactions that were very toxic and very dramatic, and there is an interaction that I talk about. I go talk to high schools now about healthy relationships and red flags with the nonprofit organization that I work with.
Okay.
Because I was a teenager when I met him, and I now have an 18-year-old daughter, and when she started dating, I was terrified.
Yeah.
She came home from school one day and was like, I was in health class, and a consent slide came up, and the teacher said, well, that's self-explanatory, and skipped past it. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
no. And so I went to a social worker, and there's been presentations, right? But I think that when there's presentations about domestic violence and sexual assault, it's a statistic or a number, nothing that is relatable to a teenager.
Yeah, not real life stories.
No. And so I wanted to go in and I wanted to present my relationship the way that it was. It wasn't scary. I fell in love with this person. Yeah. And that is how I present it. And I just talk about my experience and how it evolved, because I never would have believed anyone.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And so I looked back at that time and I was like, who would I have listened to? And I don't know who it was or who it would have been.
Right.
But I thought maybe someone who lived it, I maybe would have listened to them. I don't expect that I'm going to go in and change everybody. But I talk about one experience where he was defending me. I don't even remember what the interaction was. I think his parents had come over to talk to my parents, and it was very heated. And my grandmother ended up coming over at the time. And I talk to this woman every day. She is an angel that walks the planet. I love her with all of my heart and soul. And he got in her face and screamed at her in this interaction. Oh, no. And I thanked him for that. I told him, thank you for standing up for me and defending my emotions. And it is something that I still feel really sick to my stomach about. At the time, I didn't. Yeah. And I think that's what makes me sick about it. Is that I was like, oh my heck, thank you so much for screaming at my grandmother. I don't care if you're defending my actions or not. That's not how you do it. Yeah. And I think the fact that I didn't see that in the time is what makes me feel disgusted with myself. And so there was a lot of tension, and I was putting distance, but it was never, I think the reason that I like talking about isolation now, it was never something he told me I had to do. He
Yeah.
just made it so hard that I chose it myself. So I never saw it as something that he did to me because it was something that I chose. I couldn't manage the dynamic of keeping them happy and him happy. We would come home and he would tell me they don't like me, they don't want me around, and we would have major arguments. And I'm like, no, that's not true. That's not real. And I would call them and I would be like, hey, I'm not going to say, hey, we're having arguments at home because they already don't like him. So I'm
Right.
not going to give them more not to like.
Right.
But I also want to alleviate the arguments I'm having at home. So I'm trying to play this weird middle ground.
Yeah.
And it just always blew up in my face. They were like, we're involving him. He doesn't involve himself. Like, what do you want us to do? And I'm like, I don't know. But like, he's not feeling
Yeah.
involved. And it just turned into this thing that I chose the isolation. So I never saw it as something he did to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I feel like at that age too, it's like you don't like
Early
even
20s.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Even
No.
early 20s, mid 20s.
Yep.
You know, you're just like you're still not making the right
No.
decisions all the time.
No.
You know,
And especially when you're like learning and growing up with this person, that it's just subtle. It's not. And again, I mean, there are things that I think back to now and I'm like, why in the hell did I ever agree to that? Or why did I do that? And it does make me feel, I don't know if insecure is the right word, but I never felt like I was ugly or like I wasn't lovable. And then I slowly started feeling that. The longer I was with him, the more I started feeling that. And I don't even know now, being out of it, that I could identify exactly what it was.
yeah,
But it definitely started happening. My identity was very much his wife and the mother of his children. That was my role, and I prided myself in that. That, again, I would not have told anyone that I was unhappy, and I don't think I was.
yeah,
I would I would set an alarm in the morning and I would wake him up for work. I would lay his clothes out on the bed when he was in the shower. I would go make his lunch for work. I would get the kids up. I would get them to school. I would clean the house. We would do dinner. It was a perfectly functional machine. And I prided myself in how well everything just functioned, and it worked. And so I think that's why I wouldn't have told anyone that I was unhappy. But little things, I remember one story that I talk about now that I never realized as a problem, and something that is still really stuck with me, is I was at Costco with one of my friends, and he had mentioned that he needed socks. And so Costco socks, $8.99. What are they? I don't know. And I picked up the phone to call him, and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm calling him to ask if I can buy socks. And she's like, you're calling to ask if you can buy him socks? And I was like, yeah. And I didn't really think much of it. I remembered like leaving thinking, well, because I let the call go through. I asked him. He said, yes, I got the socks. So I remember leaving that interaction thinking like, okay, well, she thinks it's weird. So is it weird? But at the time, I was getting all the things I needed, but I definitely had to kind of make it his idea that we needed the things, right? I didn't have the ability to just go and get what I wanted. I had to ask for everything. Or if I did spend money, I would send pictures of receipts or things like that. And I didn't see a problem because he was the one making the money. I was the stay-at-home mom, and so it just kind of worked. That did evolve, and the last year that I was with him, obviously it evolved, that's why we're sitting here. But the last year that I was with him, he did remove my name off of the bank account, even though I was the only one employed, and I had no way to access money. And I didn't feel like I had the ability or the capability to change that situation, even though in reality I very much did.
Yeah.
It didn't even cross my mind because it had been so conditioned into me for such a long time that why would I think that?
Yeah.
And so that still stays. My new husband is the most patient human on the entire planet, and he flies airplanes, and there will be times where I'm like, honey, can I get a Diet Coke? And he's like about ready to take off, and he'll be like, yep, have the best day. And it's just like so patient and so nice. I just don't know how you fix that. I've been in therapy. I've done all the things, and you face the big things, right? But those little teeny tiny things that don't really matter at the end of the day, I don't have the time or energy to dig into why I do that. And if he's going to be patient, I do get better. I can get gas now by myself, and I don't ask. But, I mean, it's just stupid things that I really resent that I didn't even see as a problem at the time, you know?
Yeah. And so as your relationship continued, how did you know that it was becoming a problem?
I don't think I did until he hit me, and even then I didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
A lot of things really changed in our marriage. there was never drugs and there was never alcohol, which I think makes it worse for me sometimes because there's nothing that I can excuse it on, you know?
Yeah.
But there is one, I think the first time that I realized that things were escalating, he wanted to send money to his girlfriend in jail. So as our marriage progressed, he wanted me to be a sister wife. And I said no to that. I was like, no, not really my vibe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really want to do that. Which, when I said no to that, eventually evolved into, I want to date other women. You alone are never going to make me fully happy. This isn't about you. This is about me. But if you really love me, then you're going to let me do this because you want me to be fulfilled in life. And at this point, we had 2 or 3 children. We have 3 children together. And so I don't remember at what point he presented that.
Right.
But at that point, divorce in my family was not something I had seen. And even if I had seen it, it's not something that had gone well. And so in my mind, I would, whenever I did, and it wasn't often, when I would ask people about things, there would be like, oh, well, marriage is hard. You know, you just got to stick it out. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, well, why am I going to leave this to do hard with someone else and share my kids with somebody when maybe I can just manage this?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And I know that sounds so dumb, and I wish that I wouldn't have, but that was the thought process.
Yeah. You're like, well, if things are going to be hard regardless, why not be with my husband and have our kids together?
Because he just wants to go on dates every once in a while. Most guys want to go hang out with their guy friends. Like, did it make me happy? Absolutely not. But at this point, I just didn't feel like I had any other, my self-esteem was gone. My identity was him and my kids. I didn't have my own identity. And so it didn't make me happy, but I didn't feel like I had another choice. And so at this point, he had a girlfriend that was in jail, and he wanted to send her money. And we could not support the children that we had. And we could, but not, like, it wasn't, we had, I don't know. Yes, I'm not above helping someone. It wasn't, but it just, I didn't understand. Like, we can't even do what we're doing. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah, we have our own struggles
right
now.
And so I remember, I don't know if I indicated that I was leaving or just that I was upset, but we were yelling and arguing, and he ended up punching a hole in the wall of our hallway. And our kids were in the house, and it freaked me out enough that I don't know how it ended that night, but I remember the next morning our kids came up the stairs, and he was standing there. And our daughter looked at the wall, and she was like, what happened? And he goes, I hit the wall so I wouldn't hit Mom.
Oh, man.
And I looked at my kids, and I said, I am so sorry that I made Dad so upset. I will be better.
Oh, man.
And I meant it. I believed it because I know what that had to have felt like for them.
Yeah.
To, like, I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. But in my mind, like, I know they heard the argument, and then seeing the result of what happened, knowing that his intention was to hit me, but he hit the wall, the whole experience was just really hard.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling in that moment like things are getting bigger than me, but I still felt like I could manage it, which sounds totally dumb. But even at that time, I didn't consider divorce.
Yeah.
And I don't have many pictures. Every time he would get mad, he would wipe my phone of like pictures or anything because he was scared that I was going to talk to people or do things. And I do have a picture of that was dated around September 19th, 2019. And the first time he got physical with me was October 31st, 2019. And I remember, so he lost his job in January of that year, and he had been the sole provider for our home. He had a really good job, and I had just been stay-at-home mom. And I think that was a really big hit to his ego. And he was like, nope, I've done this. It's your turn. Go get a job. I was willing to do that, but I had been a stay-at-home. I graduated high school. What job am I going to get that's going to support our family? It was really overwhelming. And so for me to take on all of it was a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it just got to all of us. And he had left for the day with the kids, and I didn't know that he was leaving. And so when I got home, I was expecting we were going trick-or-treating. We were doing all these things. And when I got home and no one was there, it made me really anxious because I knew he was really depressed. He had threatened police-assisted suicide multiple times because there had just been things that had been escalating in the relationship. And he had told me, like, I will go down by police-assisted suicide before I surrender to anybody. He had threatened suicide a handful of times. And there had been one interaction where he had taken, I think it was this interaction, actually. So he came home and he could tell that I was irritated or I was anxious. And I was just off. Like, I didn't know where he had gone. I didn't know what was happening.
Of course you're going to feel anxious.
Yeah. And he had our kids. We had 3 kids at this point. And he came home and I remember he got really, really upset. And he had a handgun in our closet. Sorry. Okay. He pulled it out of the closet and he held it to the side of his head. And he was probably about as far apart as we were. And he told me that if I really felt like he did nothing as a husband and a father, that he would pull the trigger. And I remember being so scared of the facial expression that I made, or saying the wrong word, or saying it in the wrong tone, or I just looked at him and I said, nope, that's not what I think. And he put the gun down, and I remember I fell to the floor and I just started to cry because what do you do?
Yeah, my gosh.
And I remember he picked me up by the back of my hair and started screaming at me and told me that I was selfish because he was the one hurting in this moment. It wasn't about me. And I ended up going and sitting on the side of the bed, and I remember he came up to the side of me and he hit me in the side of the head, and I fell down to the bed, and he got on top of me and he started strangling me. And eventually he got off. I don't think I lost consciousness, but he did start recording me in this interaction, and it was bizarre. And I remember I was just trying to follow him around the house because our kids were in the house, and I didn't know what the hell was happening. And so I remember, no, it's really fine. I don't know how long we walked around the house for, but at some point it showed him in the recording throw a drink at me and pushing me back into a bedroom. So he had taken our youngest daughter into his gun room, and I could hear him in there telling her that she was never going to see me again. And she wasn't old enough that she could comprehend what he was saying, but I definitely knew what he was saying, and I felt so out of control. I went and I laid in a bathtub, and I locked myself in the bathroom because I didn't know what to do. And I remember I had been messaging my mom, and I was like, he hit me. I don't know what to do. And she was like, I'm going to call the police. And I have never begged a human not to do something harder in my whole entire life. And I get a lot of judgment for that moment. And I still feel like I did the right thing. Because I do believe that had police showed up in that moment, that could have been more detrimental to me and my children. But I don't think a lot of people understand. I think a lot of people question why I didn't want that to happen in that moment. And eventually he did end up leaving, and it was the most bizarre thing on the planet. He ended up sending our oldest to ask me if I wanted anything from Walmart. And I said, nope. And he drove off. And I still think that he was probably parked around the corner expecting me to leave in our car. I did not do that. I did grab my kids, and I grabbed some clothes, and I ran into our neighbor's backyard, and I hid there. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night, and I called my parents, and I asked them to come and pick us up. Because in my mind, I think he was watching for the car. Like, that's, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's still what I think. I text him when I got there, and I said, like, I think he got home, and he's like, you're not here. And I said, I'm at my parents' house. I just need some time. And I think he texted me that night. I'm sure a lot of things were said. I don't remember all of the things that were said. But the next morning, he showed up at my parents' house. And he was texting me, and he was like, come out and talk to me, or I'm going to call the police. And I was like, okay. Like, what are you going to say to them? I thought he was joking. And I was like, I'm not coming out to talk to you. Like, I need a minute. I don't
even know what happened last night.
I was in shock.
Absolutely.
Next thing I know, cops are at my parents' house. And I was like, and he had told them that he was trying to get the kids and take them to school, and I wasn't letting them go to school. That's what he said. And I was like, I'm just going to tell them what happened then. So I said, this is what happened. We were in not the same city that it had happened, so they had to call the city that it had happened in. And so they sent him home. The police officers from the city that we lived in went and asked him. They were like, well, this is what she said is happening or had happened. What do you have to say? And he was like, nope, that's not what happened. I have a video. I will show you. And so he sent the video of us that night that he had recorded, and that is what got him arrested. I did not know this. I did not know that that's what got him arrested. I never said arrest him. I was very confused. At that whole process, I was really confused. I did end up staying with my parents for about 6 weeks. And in that time frame, there was a lot of information and a lot of opinions being thrown at me. And I think that that was a huge reason why I ended up going back to him. The victim's advocate for that city had just started. And so she was trying to kind of acclimate in her new position. I was being told by his mom that I was doing this to him, which was really confusing to me because no one said, do you want him arrested? No one said, do you want to press charges? It just started happening on top of the fact that, no, I did not ask him to hit me in the head or strangle me. Nope, didn't ask for that.
Do you guys know any other story? Do you know my actual story?
No. Well, and that's the thing. None of them have talked to me since. So even after I went back, I was with him for another year. After that, I never spoke to his mom after that. Yeah. So I don't know what she believes. I don't know what she believes now. But I was gone for about 6 weeks. And that was a really hard time. I remember asking my victim's advocate, what is my place in this? Like, where do I fit? Yeah. Because I was being told all of these things and it didn't make sense. And she just kept telling me, you're important. I'm like, thank you. I know I'm important. But where do I, like, if I wasn't here, would this still be happening to him? Like, that was my question. And she could never really give me a straight answer. On top of the fact that I have never felt very understood by my parents. And because I think there was a lot of guilt there in them not being able to protect me and my kids. And so they wanted to kind of keep us close and keep us in. And so they wanted me to be home all the time. And it was very much reminiscent of like teenage Lindsay, where there was like curfew. But I'm a 35-year-old woman who has just come from being controlled by someone. Right. And that felt so crappy. And so unfortunately, my thought process was not, I'm divorcing him because he hit me. It was, he's got to know that he needs help now because he was arrested. And other people are telling him he needs help because throughout this whole year, things had been going downhill. He was depressed. I had been trying. You can't make someone get help.
Right. Yeah.
So in my mind, the thought was, now he knows he needs help. It's not just me telling him. So our family can work. Our family can stay together. He's going to do the work to change. And I ended up going back to him. Unfortunately, that escalated almost instantly. My keys were locked in a safe when I went back, or he would drive me to work if he would let me go, and he would wait in the parking lot to make sure that I wasn't talking to people. So as I mentioned, I was the only one employed, and he removed my name off of the bank account. In the 6 weeks that I was gone, he also listed the home for sale that we had together. And this is another thing that I wish I would have known more about financial things before I had gotten with him. But again, you're 16, so what do you know? I was not very active in our finances. I asked for permission for everything. Why would I be active in them? And so I was not listed on the home in any way. I had no way to get any information on the sale of the home. I had no way to I don't even know what happened to that money. Yeah. No clue. So that happened in the 6 weeks that I was gone, and I had no way to stop it. And I'm sure I could have, but like, I didn't even have the mental capacity to get myself out of bed, let alone call an attorney to stop. It was just confusing.
You're lost. Yeah, you're not even sure what's happening.
No. And so I went back right before the home sold, and we moved. And so no one in my family knew where we were at. We were in the same city as them, but they didn't know where. Yeah. It was COVID, so he pulled all the children out of school, and so no one was leaving the home. He had me switch to an at-home position. And in that year, him being physical with me was not uncommon. I think I got punched in the face and thrown down the stairs and locked out of the house in the winter. I slept under a horse trailer a couple of times. He ran me over with his car one time. Like, none of this was new. And I just didn't feel like I had a way out. Yeah. Like, I felt so trapped, and my kids didn't trust me. That was another really hard thing. None of us were leaving. He wasn't employed. So a lot of times when I talk, people are like, you had to have had a moment where you could leave. I did not. I did not have a moment where I was without him. He was unemployed. We were all at home. And so even if he goes to the grocery store for a minute, like, I had left before. It didn't feel safe or like I had options. It didn't feel like when I left it was going to work. It just didn't feel that way. And I remember, sorry, this one's always a fun one. I remember coming to the realization that I was going to die if I stayed. It wasn't that I didn't love him. I knew that the interactions with him were getting more intense to where I wasn't going to survive, and then my kids were not going to have me anymore. And so I remember, this is the story that I really struggle with, and I think I'm having a harder time because recently there has been a lot of judgment around this one, and I think I just want to add some context. I tell this story because people talk all the time about how leaving is the most dangerous time for someone who's being abused. And I tell this story to give context to that. We had been in the house with him for almost a year at this point. I think it had been about 10 months. I have a hard time with my timelines. But I wasn't allowed to sleep during that last year. I did not feel mentally stable or coherent. I did not trust any thought I had. I don't know how many days I went in between showering. I was required to care for him in whatever way he felt necessary. I would work like a 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift or something like that. And then I would take care of the kids for a second. But our oldest daughter was pretty much required to raise the kids underneath her. And it was my job to give him a massage or have sex with him or whatever he felt he needed, because he told me that I caused him PTSD from leaving him the year previous. I was not a human. I was getting beat on a normal basis. I trusted nothing. I was being sexually assaulted in my marriage, which I didn't even realize because in my mind those two things didn't go hand in hand. But I also didn't feel like I had any I don't even know how to put it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I couldn't say no. I didn't say no. I didn't trust any thought I had.
Yeah, you're just kind of like an autopilot almost. Like you're
If
just
that.
kind of
Like,
you're just kind of going.
So it had come to the point where, like, I knew I was going to die. We were down in our unfinished basement, and I looked at him, and I was like, I know I don't make you happy. Like, just let me leave. The kids can stay. I'll go. And then you can just do whatever you want to do. And he just stared at me and said absolutely no words. And I remember I started walking towards the stairs. And I don't know if I was going to leave or I don't know. I just started walking. And he walked around the couch and he grabbed me by my throat and he threw me backwards onto the unfinished concrete of our basement floor. Sorry.
You're okay.
I remember looking up and I could see him just screaming over me, and I could see that he was so mad, but I could not hear anything he was saying. And everything was just ringing. And I put my hand back and I pulled it out and it had blood all over it. And he made me go lay on an ice pack up in our bedroom for like an hour and a half before he realized, like, I probably need to take her somewhere. So he ended up taking me to the hospital, and again, it's COVID, so he told them that I had fallen off a dresser trying to hang a curtain in our basement. And I mean, I was coherent, I guess, but I don't remember a ton of that. I know that they cared for me. I left with 4 staples in the back of my head. I know that they did things. I don't remember talking to people. I don't remember talking to a nurse. I don't remember anyone asking me questions. And I don't necessarily judge them or hold anyone accountable, but I do kind of wonder how that situation would have played out differently had a nurse come and been like, hey, are you okay? Because I had not been allowed to be without him for almost a whole entire year. I hadn't had an opportunity to really ask for help. I mean, there had been moments, I guess, but how do you really ask for help in that situation, you know? And so when I tell that story, like, okay, no, my intention was never to leave the children and not go back for them. My intention was to get out of the home alive and call the police and go back for my children. And I tell, like, in my mind, I was giving him the perfect out. The kids can stay. I'm the one making you unhappy. I will leave. And that, I almost died. And so I just want people to understand, like, you don't know what someone is going to do when you do try to leave. And that's
Yeah.
what that means.
Yeah,
Like, it's not
absolutely.
just, I think they say that phrase, but when you don't put like a real life example to it, I think people just dismiss it, right?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, the hospital called him and he came back and picked me up, and I went home with him. And he could not clean it. He said he felt too bad. And so our oldest daughter had to clean it for me. And that is something that I don't know that I will ever forgive myself for, because, like I said, she's 18 now. So at the time, this was 2020. She wasn't dumb. I know
Yeah.
she knows enough. She didn't see it,
Mm-hmm.
but I know she knows where that came from.
Yeah.
And I really wonder how that will affect her. Like, she's been in therapy. We
Mm-hmm.
talk. We have very open communication. But you don't take stuff like that away, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, something that she can unsee, but at the same time, I don't think you should beat yourself up about that either. I know it's
Yeah.
so hard to do. Like, I should have done this, could have done this, whatever. But at the same time, you were in this like state of like just what is happening.
Yeah.
You know, you're just, like we said, autopilot, if that.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you can't blame yourself too much. I know it's
Yeah.
easier said than done, but like,
It's so hard.
yeah.
And that's the thing. I know that, like, all the things that they went through and all the things that they still continue to go through are not my fault, but it's so hard not to hold guilt,
Yeah.
because I did keep them in that situation for such a long time, and they did lose trust in me, because there were times during that year where I was like, we've got to go. And they would not leave, because when we came back, he was very manipulative towards them. So he had told them that they didn't love him and that they betrayed him. And so they felt really nervous to leave too.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is where my guilt comes from, is that they lost faith and trust in me, and that I would care for them in that way. I think I have earned that back from them since.
Yeah, yeah.
But in that time frame, I definitely did, and it was a really hard thing for me to earn back from
Yeah.
them.
But also, you're trying to protect them. Like you said, you didn't know what he was going to
No.
do. And the moment you did try to tell him, like, hey, I'm just going to go, you know, and then it went south.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's coming from a place of love, though.
Yeah.
Not because you didn't care
Yeah.
to, like, get them out of that situation, but you didn't know what was going to happen for all of you guys.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and again, my thought going back to him the first time, like, I get a lot of people that judge me for that. They're like, you did have an opportunity to ask for help. You were with your parents. Well, yes, I was with my parents, but at that time, he had hit me one time. That was, and yes, there was abuse prior to that. And that's why I speak, because I think abuse is so much more than someone hitting you. And I wish that I would have seen that before it got to that point. And I think that's why I tell my story too. I want
Exactly.
people to see, I don't want someone to spend 18 years in a relationship like that. And so, I mean, that, unfortunately, that was my thought process. And it did escalate in a very
Yeah.
severe way. One of the last interactions, and this was the one that we went to jury trial for, was on December 27th, 2020. And I don't even know what started it. We were in our bathroom, and I remember, it sounds so dumb, we were arguing about something, and I think that I was trying to calm him down. I'm pretty sure he was sitting on the toilet. And I remember I said something to him, and I saw the look on his face change, and I knew. And at this point, like, I was more scared of every interaction, because I could tell they were getting more intense. And he stood up and he hit me in the side of the head, and I did lose consciousness. I woke up to him grinding his knuckle into my collarbone. And I remember I crawled back into our closet, and I had like a table set up in the back with a mirror on it where I would like get ready. And he picked me up by my hair, and he held my face in the mirror, and he was like, look at that bitch face. How could I love that? And he threw me backwards, and I remember I huddled into a ball, and he just started punching me in my ribs. And I remember the police asked, and I think I told them 15 to 20 times, but I don't remember. Like, that was the moment in that interaction that I had enough time huddled. I don't even know how to explain it, where my brain had the thought, this is the time I'm going to die. And I was so scared of the whole interaction, because I didn't know how it was going to end.
Yeah.
He did stop, and he had my phone, and he threw it at me, and I had ducked, and it shattered against the wall. So at that point, I didn't have the ability to call anyone again. I don't know that I would have, but I didn't have the ability to at that point. And he started leaving our room. I had a really hard time following him because I knew following him meant that I'm continuing what is happening. But I also knew that all of my babies were outside of that room. And so I went after him, and he held me against the wall right outside of our bedroom door, and he dug his thumbs into my eyes. And he ended up throwing me backwards into my son's door, and all of my kids were out of their rooms watching this at this point. And I could hear them behind me, like, screaming, "Dad, stop! Dad, stop!" And he went down the stairs. And again, I follow him because what else am I going to do? And I remember he came over to me. I just sat on the corner of our couch because, again, I don't know what to do, but I'm not leaving him alone because I don't trust what he's doing. And he came up to me with a knife, and he was like, "Just do everyone a favor and kill yourself." And I remember I grabbed the knife from him and I threw it across the kitchen. And they asked me in jury trial, "Well, how did you get it from him?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if he thought I was going to do it or but I just threw the knife. That's what I know." So when he went over to where I thrown the knife, I stood up and I was walking. The stairs to go upstairs were right by our front door. Again, I don't know where my intention was to go, but I was removing myself from that room. He stopped me in the front entryway and he held me up against the wall. And I don't even know. He asked me a question and I don't even remember what the question was, but I didn't know how to answer it. I couldn't physically answer him. And he got so mad and he headbutt me in between the nose. And then went upstairs and fell to the floor in our bedroom and said he was having a heart attack. And I was like, "If you're having a heart attack, like, we need to go somewhere, call an ambulance." And he's like, "They're not going to do anything." And I was like, "Okay." He did have a friend living with us at the time, and he was in his room playing a computer game. And I did go in and ask for help. And he's like, "What happened?" And just played dumb. And I knew that I was just stuck. I stayed with him. I'm pretty sure I had sex with him that night. And I don't know. That's a thing that you don't get rid of, you know? I think that's why I had such a hard time admitting that I had been assaulted, because I didn't ever realize that sex could be consensual in that way. I had such an unhealthy relationship with sex, not only coming from a religious standpoint, but finding myself sexually with someone who maybe wasn't the healthiest for me, that never formed in a good way, I guess. So, it was about a week before he got angry again. And at this point, I was still trying to work, but I was in a lot of pain physically. My nose was broken. My eye sockets were fractured. I had cracked ribs, and my collarbone was fractured, but I didn't know any of that. I didn't get medical help. I didn't leave the house. I think there's a picture of me laying on the couch with him the next day that his friend took that they tried to submit in jury trial. And I was like, I was just trying to survive and keep him happy. Like, that was the goal.
I just don't understand sometimes too, is that people don't understand that fear, you know? I personally have not been in a domestic violence relationship, but like understanding like there is that fear like that comes with it, that you can't just walk away. I've heard some other people's stories as well, and like it's not that easy. No. Well, and at that point, like, I was so physically injured that my body was broken. Like, even if I wanted to leave, like, the reality of me doing that at that point, not only being sleep deprived, but like it was an all day blowout. Like, he beat the crap out of me. And so I had to care for my children. I had to care for him. I had to continue to work because my job was the only thing paying the bills for the house. And I had no idea how the bills were getting paid. I just knew we weren't getting kicked out of our house and there was stuff for the kids to eat. So I was just doing what I knew. That was all I was doing. So it was January 2nd, 2021 was the last day that I saw him. Well, last day I lived with him, I guess. He got angry and threw me out of the house into a concrete pillar. And there was a phone that his friend had. They both had worked for corporate T-Mobile. And so our kids had used a phone that his friend had. They'd called it like the home phone. And so when he was dragging me out of the house, I saw it. And I grabbed it and he didn't notice. So he threw me out of the house and I hid behind the side of our air conditioning unit. And there
when I was working at the job at that time, there was like a VPN login where you had like the contacts of who you worked for too. And I had to have that on that phone. Otherwise I couldn't log into work. So he allowed me to do that. And I called her. I had previously worked with her in person. And so I knew her well enough, but I had not talked to anyone in a year.
Yeah.
There had been no contact with anyone outside of like phone calls I was getting for work that were definitely not anyone I knew. This was the only phone. I wasn't going to call a family member. That didn't feel safe. And I don't know why, but that was not what was on my mind. That is not what happened. So I called her and she answered. And she came and picked me up. And she was like, we need to call the police. Well, in that same breath, he knocked on her door. And she answered with her doorbell camera. She's like, no, she's not here. Like, played dumb. And we just kept the door locked. And we did call the police. And I'm pretty sure he tracked the phone there. I'm pretty sure that's how he knew where we were at. Well, by the time the police got there from that city, we're in the same situation. We're a city over. They're calling the city that we're living in. The kids are still at the home. And so they went and had our home surrounded. And by the time he got back into the cul-de-sac, he noticed the police officers and tried to turn out of the cul-de-sac. And they did block him in. And they called me and they were like, we have him in custody. Do you want to come and get your kids? And I said, yes, please.
Yeah.
So I went and I picked up my kids and we went and stayed with my friend that night. He was in custody that night. I think it was only that weekend because I'm pretty sure it was a Friday that he was arrested and his mom bailed him out that Monday. So on that weekend, we had a police officer that came with us because his friend was still living in the home. We went and we had like 2 hours was all they allotted us to get whatever we could out. So it was like beds for the kids and their clothes and I mean, I don't even know what I took. We didn't have a lot. I didn't have nothing, but I didn't have a lot. My name wasn't on the bank account, so I had no way to access anything that was in there. I didn't know what was in there. And luckily, the victim's advocate for this new city was absolutely amazing. She got me in contact with a nonprofit organization called the Refuge Utah, and they assist victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And within 6 days, they got me and my kids into an apartment. And that was huge for me, feeling like I could do it myself. I didn't want to go and live with my parents. I didn't want to go and be controlled by anybody else. I wanted to figure out who I was as a mom and my own adult and my own individual. I felt scared of every human on the planet. And I just wanted to be with my babies in a place that no one could do anything other than what I wanted to do for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can finally make these decisions and not have anyone tell me otherwise.
Yeah. And so I was very firm. I did not go back and forth after this. Like, it wasn't, I think there was 3 times that I left him in total where things were like escalating. Like October 31st, 2019 was the second time. This last time I was done. I knew I was done. I did still love him. And I have a hard time talking about that because I think I judge myself for how do you love someone like that? How do you love someone that does that to you? But I will say, like, even watching the body cam footage now, which I have all of it. I still keep it. I will never get rid of it because there are times where even now, sitting here telling you this, it feels like I'm talking about a TV show or something that I watched. It feels like a different life.
Yeah, that's what a trauma brain will do to you too. Like, that wasn't actually real. You know?
Well, and that I tolerated that, and that I lived through that, and that is what I accepted as my day-to-day life. That's really odd for my brain to accept now. So getting into that apartment was huge. Like, that was kind of what gave me the kickstart of, like, I can do this. I got a job at a flight school with a friend, and it kind of gave me the freedom to be flexible with my kids and their schedule. We did end up going all the way to jury trial because, unfortunately, his story, still to this day, even after conviction, is that he did not do anything. That I did it all to myself to hurt him and keep the kids from him, and that I'm crazy and that I have made it all up. That still to this day is his narrative, which that is a little bit mind-blowing to me because even
you can't
after
admit anything.
No, that's why I'm like, and I don't know, like, I guess it makes sense because if that's the story, then it's got to stay that way, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so it took us about 1 year and a month to get to jury trial. And because our kids were present for the last event, they were there. The 2 older ones testified in jury trial with me. And he was found guilty of all counts. And unfortunately, because it was his first charge, he only got sentenced to 28 days in custody and 30 days house arrest.
Oh my gosh.
Which I knew nothing was going to feel fair, but that felt
Minimal.
severely unfair. Like, you almost killed me,
Oh my
and
gosh,
28 days was what you got. And he wasn't employed at this point still.
Yeah.
So what punishment is 30 days house arrest? If you don't have a job, how about get a job?
Yeah.
That sounds harder.
Yeah, seriously.
So, I mean, it was just stupid things like that. And I wasn't getting child support at the time. I've gotten some child support, but we still have a lot that he owes that I just have kind of given up because the state of Utah does not really do a lot. Like, even though it's collected through their agency, they have told me that they are so far behind that they are not taking past cases to court.
Oh my
and I was like, so awesome.
Yeah, so what does that mean for us over here?
That we just do it alone,
Oh
which again, it's not new, but it's discouraging and it's frustrating.
For sure.
So after my jury trial concluded, the nonprofit organization that assisted me and my children asked if I would be interested in sitting on their board and being a voice for other survivors.
Oh, awesome.
And I jumped. I was like, yes, please.
Yes.
There are a lot of survivors that don't feel comfortable talking, and I can understand why. There are a lot of days that I am still very scared of him because I live in the same state as him. I live an hour south of him. I do not trust any decision he makes still to this day. But I also know that I have helped so many people in talking that when I had the opportunity to do it in a bigger way, I really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it in a way that was respectful. I don't want people to feel like I'm living in my victimhood because I don't feel like that's what I'm doing. I feel like I'm telling what happened to me because that was my life.
Yeah.
And it took me about a year and 8 months after his arrest to finally divorce him. In that time frame, lots of therapy happened, lots of life experience, and it was in that time I had met a lot of people, but I met my now husband in that time frame, and we had just been like friends and seen each other in passing, but we started dating probably about 2 months after my divorce finalized, and it was oddly safe. I knew very, very early on that he was different and that he was going to be a part of my life. And he just held space for me and the kids in a way that no other human ever had. He was so patient with any emotion we were feeling or any memory we had. Because, I mean, when you talk about stuff like this, most people don't want to talk about stuff like this. It's uncomfortable. And no matter what emotion the kids were feeling, he was so good to just kind of let them feel it. Let them. It wasn't shut it down because this is uncomfortable. It's like, let's work through it.
Yeah.
And that was
Tell
a very,
me more.
yes,
You know.
it was very different than what we had experienced. And so I was co-parenting at this time. We had gone into divorce and my kids had not seen my ex-husband in person outside of jury trial in almost 2 years. And I asked for therapy reintroduction for them. And I got told that I was petty and that I needed to be a better co-parent. And that fear of abuse was not abuse.
My jaws to the floor. Are you kidding?
No, and it brought me back to that moment of him holding a gun to his head. I'm not going to lie, because I had been told that the judge is watching your reaction. He's watching your facial expression. He's watching how you're acting as a parent and all of these things. I was being told in no uncertain terms that every time I was in a courtroom, I was being evaluated. And so in that moment, I felt like I was being completely fair. I said, the kids are already in therapy. They have a therapist. Each of them do. Just come and meet with their therapist. When their therapist says, we're good, the kids feel good, you feel good, we'll go to whatever parenting is set right here. And I felt like I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't asking for property. I wasn't asking for anything outside of therapy reintroduction, and that judge looked at me square in the face and said that I was petty and needed to be a better co-parent.
That is just
and
insane
I froze.
To me. Think about the kids. Don't think about our issues here. Think about the kids and what's safe
they don't
for
do
them.
That. They don't do that.
That's just
it was brutal.
So frustrating.
It was brutal. It took about 3 months for him to continue the behavior that he did. There were other things at play that I choose not to talk about publicly, but there was, I don't remember if it was a protective order or a restraining order. We applied for one and we got told no, that the fear of abuse was not abuse. We applied for the other one, and it got approved like within days. So I'm like, how does this even make sense? But once that got approved, I think it made it enough of a burden for him that he didn't want to fight it anymore. It was his way of being like, well, I tried. And he called our attorney and said, I would like to give up my parental rights and I want her new husband to adopt the kids. that presented a really interesting, hard emotional dynamic for me. And I think a lot of people get confused by that too, because yes, I knew that that was what was best for them in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
But I also know that that's their dad.
Yeah.
That's their dad saying, I don't want to be your dad anymore.
Yeah.
And even presenting that information was really difficult for me. I called my therapist and it was totally unprofessional. I texted her because it happened, I think, on a weekend or something stupid. And I was like, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what to say. Like, how do you present that to a kid?
Yeah.
And she's like, it's not your job to defend his actions. It's your job to present the information in a child appropriate way. That's your job. And
that's still so hard.
It sucked.
Oh my gosh.
It sucked because all I could think about was my dad saying, I don't want to be your dad. That was all I could relate to.
I know, it makes me tear up.
Yeah.
Like, how hard
How do you do that?
is. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, like, even me delivering that information and, like, looking at them and knowing how much I love them and, like,
yeah.
Like, how do you just choose that?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I still.
So yeah, of course, that's hard because it's like, even though you guys went through what you went through, at the end of the day, you're like, these are still your kids.
Yeah.
And you are voluntarily wanting to give your rights away.
Yes. And his claim is that once he did that, the negative stories about him would stop. And he was doing it for their mental well-being. That's what he claims. And his thing that he would say to them all the time, which drove me up the wall, was, once you're 18, I can tell you the real truth. Which is just so invalidating to their reality and what they went through. They saw it. They testified in jury trial with me. It wasn't things that I said to them. This was what they saw. There are things that they didn't see. We don't talk about those. If they ask me questions, I try really hard, again, to give, like, age-appropriate answers. But, like, I can only imagine as a kid in a situation like that being told, I'll tell you when you're older or something, just being so confusing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am grateful and not all at the same time for them saying it, because it did take that part away from me, right? I was able to just talk about it rather than not talk about it, which I think would have made them feel so much more confused. So my new husband has since adopted them, and things are amazing. But, I mean, it's always hard, you know?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's always going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
So during, like, trial and stuff like this, I know it's, like, age-appropriate things, like talking to your kids about it, but how did they handle that during that time?
That was hard. And I actually went back and listened to jury trial, because I think you have a vision in your mind of what things actually were and then what it actually was, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think my oldest was 15 at the time. We hit jury trial in 2022. Yes. And she's 18 now. So math is hard. I think she was almost 16, but I think she was around 15.
Okay.
And my son also was there. He's 3 years younger than her. He came in and he was very timid. And I mean, it was scary. It was COVID, so there wasn't, like, extra people there. I could only have my victim's advocate there. So there was the city prosecutor, him and his attorney, the jury, and the judge. And it was just like you see in TV. It was very intimidating. And I had asked for the kids to be able to testify via video chat. There was a police station that was attached to the jury or to the courthouse. And I said, can they be on property but just talk to the judge? Like, that's far less intimidating.
Yes.
And his attorney shut that down so fast. He was like, nope, we want him in person. And in my mind, that was a tactic for me to back down, because I didn't want to put my kids through that. And my daughter was pissed. And she even told him, because they were having video chats with him, she goes, I don't want to do this. And he's like, I know, I don't want to do it either. But she wasn't dumb. She knew the only reason we were doing it is because he couldn't hold himself accountable for what he did. So we went. My son, the attorney was very creative when he questioned him, which I guess is his job. But, like, the first question he asked him was, do you love your dad? And I was like, well, duh. Yeah. And so it just immediately kind of made him very emotional and very scared. And
I just
it was hard
too, to use those tactics on a young
it
kid.
was so hard for me as a mom to sit there and, again, not react, because everything, the jury is watching me and the judge is watching me, and I just have to sit there. And I'm watching my ex, who I don't even want to be within 100 miles of, stare at my baby and watching him, it was just,
You're like, you don't even look at him.
yeah,
you know?
seriously. And honestly, I feel that way now more. Now that he's given up rights to them, it irritates the shit out of me.
I bet.
When he tries to claim them at all. You
Yeah.
chose to give them up.
Yeah.
You don't get to claim them anymore. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Whether I should or should not. That is how I feel.
100%. I don't blame you for that at all.
But my daughter came in and she was much different. She was kind of spicy and angry. She was scared. She was emotional.
Yeah.
But you could tell she was like, no, this is what I saw. This is what I saw happen. And sentencing was probably about a month after jury trial. And I remember I was really, really scared of that day. I had to write a victim impact. I didn't have to. I chose to write a victim impact statement. And that was a really hard letter to write because I had been told, like, he probably will get nothing because this is his first offense.
Yeah.
And I wanted someone to know that this had been years of me doing this, you know? And it wasn't a one-time thing. It was more than that.
Yeah.
And I remember I read my letter and it wrecked me. I was crying. And then I remember out of nowhere, I could hear his voice because he came on to read a statement after. And the whole time he talked, all he could talk about was how this was going to impact him and how he could never take his kids on a field trip again. And just all these stupid things that didn't, me aside, yes, you didn't acknowledge how this is going to affect the kids or anybody outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know. I didn't expect anything different.
Yeah.
But at that moment, like, I think I had someone ask me, like, was that really shocking that was his take on it? And I still feel like, yes, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, when you know you're being sentenced for something, lie.
Yeah.
Humble yourself and be like, oh my heck, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe it. And he couldn't, even in that moment. It's still.
Couldn't even get himself to say sorry or acknowledge that it's impacted his kids.
Yeah.
How frustrating. I'm sure that was.
Yes.
I cannot even imagine.
Well, and I mean, I feel like I am so grateful and I can't, even in a healthy co-parenting situation, bouncing back and forth, I can imagine is so difficult on kids.
Yeah.
So I am so grateful to be where I'm at. I know that sounds horrible, but I think as far as my kids' mental well-being, this really was the best outcome for them to have a stable father figure, someone who wants them, someone who wants to love them and support them and give them the life that they've always deserved, and someone who wants to love me.
Yeah.
I think that even when you go to therapy and you talk about healing all of these things, until you actually do it, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so I think talking to my kids and being like, no, this isn't what a relationship should be or what a relationship should look like. I don't think either one of them believed me prior to me meeting my husband.
Yeah. And now they can physically see you guys together and see what it should look like.
Yes.
You know? I'm so sorry that you had to go through that and your kids too.
No sorries.
But I really like this kind of stuff so needs to be talked about because I feel like your age too, and it's like you guys like grew up together almost, you know. I think about when I was 16. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You know, and then you guys kind of growing up in that like young adulthood, and like of course you're still gonna love him and care for him. You guys still grew up together, and there were like subtle things that you didn't recognize earlier on, but that's why we need to talk about it, because anyone that might be in this situation, especially at a young age, it's like look for these little signs, you know, and it's like talking about it is all we can do to help.
Well, and one thing that I think it took me a really long time to figure out was choosing myself is not selfish.
Yeah.
I always really felt like if I chose something for myself, that was me being selfish to the people that I cared about or I loved or loved me, or was being selfish to my kids. And I think it was because I was conditioned to feel that way, but I didn't see it at the time. And now being with my husband, I can see that people who really love you, truly love who you are, they want you to choose yourself because they don't know what you want for you in that moment.
Right.
No one else should know that.
Yeah.
You are the only person that knows what you want in that moment, in that time, or what you need. No one else should tell you that.
Right.
And I think that I didn't really see that as a problem. And there were even comments that he would make all the time where it was like, well, I don't want you to sound stupid in public, so maybe you shouldn't talk. back. And in my mind, I took that as him caring for me and him protecting me. He didn't want me to sound dumb. But that was me taking my voice and my confidence without me even seeing it.
Yeah.
And I never would have seen that in the time. But now I can very clearly see that.
Yeah. It's almost like a different sense of like support and comfort, how you feel, you know, supported and comforted.
Yes.
But it's like the reality is it's just manipulation.
Yep.
You know, and it's just while you're in it, you just don't see it.
Yeah. I think another thing that has been really hard for me to learn is I think when you're in a relationship like that, you lose your sense of confidence and things like that. And so making decisions is really scary. And one thing that I've appreciated about being in a relationship with my husband is he helps me face those moments in a way that's not like forcing me into it, but he also knows that I'm capable of doing it. And so he allows me the space to be scared and feel whatever emotion I'm feeling, but also empower me to know that I do have the ability to face whatever I'm scared of.
Right.
Because I think that was taken from me for such a long time that I almost need someone to just reassure me for just a second, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, again, not a lot of humans could hold that space.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you found someone that's able to like handle that with you and go through the ride with you,
Yes.
you know? I mean, one of my like widow friends, you know, we've been talking recently, and she's like, I've just dated and stuff and I can't find a good guy and all this stuff. And I'm like, girl, I promise you there is someone out there that is going to have that time for you and your kids and let your kids like feel that love. And, you know, it is a big role to take on though, you know, not everyone can do it. Like, you know, for me, for you, having had your kids and stuff, and then kind of, I mean, our situations are somewhat similar, just in the fact that you do have to look for a man that is going to take on your kids too, kind of as
and
their
love
own.
them.
Yes.
Well, because I think that there's like this protective aspect of what I've already put my kids through. And again, I know it's not me, but also they didn't choose any of that, right? I brought them into this world. I brought them into that situation. And so I always had told myself, I will never put them in a situation again where I am sacrificing them or their needs for another human. And if a man cannot accept that, then they're not mine.
Right. Yeah.
And he has always, from day one, made me feel like they are his. Like he loves them like they are his. I have never felt like me caring for them has been a burden to him. He's right there with me doing it. And I didn't feel like that was real because that wasn't real for me before him. And I think I told Teresa when we were talking before, I didn't believe that any of that was real because it wasn't a reality, and people would talk about it, but until I found it, I never would have believed anybody.
Yeah. And I do want to kind of like briefly talk on that a little bit too, because I know, I mean, especially going from a relationship that was abusive and then meeting your now husband, I'm sure that in the beginning you kind of had a lot of issues within yourself, like how, like a lot of thoughts in your head, intrusive thoughts, I'm sure, and just like, how do I put myself in this relationship and try not to bring this past into this, but also still give that space too, because that was a big part of your life.
Yes.
So how did that look like in the beginning, like dating?
That was really hard and scary for me. I did know very, very early on that he was different. I could just feel it. I felt very safe with him. He was a firefighter and running a flight school at the time. He had been a firefighter for 18 years, and I think that part plays a part in it. I think that he was used to handling really stressful situations and seeing really traumatic things, and he just kind of knew how to handle it. But when I knew that things were different with him, I just kind of laid it all out before he met my kids, before we got too serious. Because I was working with the nonprofit organization, I was doing things, but I wasn't very vocal in my personal life about what I had been through. And so I just wanted him to have all of the information. Yeah. I sent him jury trial. Anything I could send him, I did. My financial situation, things with my kids. My kids were being asked to call my ex's girlfriend mom at their house when they were going. I can't control that. Yeah. Whatever it is, it is. But I knew that was going to show up at my house. So, like, if he's coming, the chance of my youngest calling him dad is really high because that's happening at the other house, right? I can't stop from whatever is happening there,
Yeah.
but I didn't want him to be intimidated by that. And so I
Right.
just kind of said, like, this is going to happen. This is why. If you can't handle this, that's okay.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so we started dating, and we would go over for dinner a couple times because he had owned a home that was kind of close to where we were living. And we would go and just make dinner with the kids and play games. And the kids got to the point where, like, we just want to stay here. And I was like, we've got to go back. You got to go to school. And one day we went, and he had bought beds for the kids and, like, furnished the rooms. So they had somewhere to sleep if we wanted to sleep over. And he was just so good with them. And it just worked. There was no... Like I said, he pushed me in the best ways. It wasn't like, I don't like to be forced to do anything. I don't know any human that does.
Yeah.
But he would support me, and he made me feel empowered because I had worked so hard to become that, right? Become my own person and face all the things. There were a lot of things in my first marriage that I hold myself accountable for. I had really awful communication. I never learned that. I never learned that in my home growing up as a child. I never learned that in early marriage because that wasn't something that was a priority to him. And so things that bothered me, I never spoke up, and I wanted to learn that. But then again, when you talk about things in therapy, implementing those can feel so different than talking about them.
Oh, yeah.
And so as I was implementing all the things that we had talked about in therapy, setting boundaries for myself, or, you know, being open about triggers or whatever we were talking about, he was so good to just kind of work with me in that moment. One thing that I was really scared of, and I talk about it, but I think it's important to talk about, but it is a little uncomfortable. I wasn't very comfortable sexually because I had been taken advantage of and been asked to do things that I didn't want to do, and done things that make me feel like a really crappy human, even though I know I'm not a crappy human. That's how I felt. And that was something that I really worried about overcoming. And I might cry. He was so amazing to not make me feel bad or uncomfortable or weird or any of those things that you worry about. And facing moments that had gone so negative for me, and him making them a moment where we just connected, healed me in ways that I don't think I could have healed myself. And I think it was things like that that just continued to happen for my kids and for me, that made me know, like, he's my person.
Yeah.
And nothing has changed since then. He is the most amazing human on the planet. He supports me in ways that I never thought I would be supported, and makes me feel like I can do anything.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful every single day to have met him.
I love that. And I feel like it is really important for people to hear that too, that you can find that love and support, and that there is hope that you can have a better future, you know, because like I said, just talking with one of my friends, she's kind of down, feeling a little hopeless right now, but like, I promise someone will come along at the right time too.
Yes.
Whenever it's necessary for you, I feel like it will come along. Sorry, let me go through my
You're totally
notes.
good.
I think I'm like 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. I think we're probably at the end. I didn't even look at these.
Like I said, I can have a conversation with any human on the planet.
I think ending with you know, like what you're doing as advocating, like you're going to high school, you're on the board, and you're you know, just getting the word out that you can survive this, that there, you know, there's help, and that you can survive this.
Yeah.
And then we'll end it on that.
Yeah. I can just talk about, say that we want to go back and talk a little bit more about being on the board. What is it? You're on the board with what?
So it's called the Refuge Utah, and it's a nonprofit
okay,
organization in Utah that helps domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors. And so I go around with their team in high schools, and we talk to like high school health classes. I've done a couple of psychology classes and law enforcement classes where I just kind of tell my story. And we talk about healthy relationships and red flags and different things like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's been something that I hope to do more as my twins get older. I had twins with my husband about a year after we got married, a year and a half after we got married. So that kind of stunted all of my goals and ambitions. It makes me have to kind of hold back a little bit. But I definitely won't stop because, again, I met him when I was 16, and every person in my life told me, you know, things feel weird. and I didn't listen to any human. And so since then, I have done that. I've done a couple of events where it's just been free to the public. I've done one where it was a mother-daughter event. We had I think 70 people show up to it, and it was amazing. And we just kind of did the same presentation. We talked about it because, I think everyone should talk about it.
Yeah.
And then I started my own podcast where I think trauma brings people together in the most uncomfortable ways, because even though you and I have been through different experiences, I think we relate in so many ways too.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just more ways to make people feel seen.
I think it's great that you're going to high school.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's when the relationships start.
Absolutely.
That's when you started,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
speaking at those I think that is so important.
Yeah, I think so too. It's
I really hope I can do it more. We recorded a video that they show when I can't go with them. I recorded a video that they play, which I think does something similar, right? But I think there's something so different about being in person and having them connect. And my daughter makes the joke all the time, because I've gone to her high school a couple of times, and she comes and she listens to me, and she was like, I don't know how you do it, but all the kids that don't listen will stop and they listen to you. And I was like, well, thank you.
But it's that impact of being there in person and then having a real life personal story, because like you said, these books and
numbers
and just statistics,
they ignore it. Why would they listen to that? I wouldn't listen to that. Go play that in front of any adult right now and tell me what person is going to just sit there and be like, this is the most entertaining thing I've ever done. No.
This could happen, this may have happened, no.
Or red flags, and they just say that word. Okay, but what does that mean? Or when I talk about leaving, right? I think, again, that comment is made all the time. And I think I had a really hard time understanding why I was sharing that story. Because, again, talking is not comfortable. I don't love talking about how my husband wanted to date other women, or, that's uncomfortable. But I think I wanted people to feel less judged, because I'm sure if I feel judged, there's 800 other women about 100 miles of vicinity that feel judged for any decision that they've made.
Absolutely.
And I just want people to know survival is not something you should be ashamed of.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I'm reminding myself of that
too. Seriously. And we all have our own little struggles, but there is hope. You have, I always say, community is the best thing to make you feel like you're not so alone.
Yes.
Listening to a podcast, even just like that, because sometimes it is uncomfortable for people to reach out to others and physically talk with someone, but listening to something, even just journaling, like we've talked about a lot, it's just writing your thoughts down makes you feel like even if you're not physically talking to someone, it makes you feel like you're heard. Just get those thoughts out.
Agreed.
The Instagram posts.
Yes. Yes.
Well, another thing I think too, the more I have talked about my story or told my story, I think it separates me from it a little bit to where I am able to evaluate my own part in it better. It makes it a little less emotional because I'm able to process it differently. But I think because people feel scared to talk about their trauma because it is uncomfortable, and there aren't many people in the world that are like, come and tell me all about your deepest, darkest secrets. Not many people get to process through their trauma in that way. And I think even going and talking to a therapist, I think that's great. But I think I have found almost more healing in these types of conversations than I have in those, because, again, I think it just makes me see the situation from a different view.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is this our ending? I know. Yeah. This was such an easy, no, sorry. For me, it was easy.
No, it was perfect.
But it was such a good flowing conversation. I wasn't looking at these cards. Just keep it going.
Good.
I just want to make sure we're not missing anything too.
No, I think you could probably ask for just that one last advice.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay. So usually we just end with asking if you have any piece of advice for anyone going through domestic violence, or even early stages. Maybe I can ask that a different way. Let me say that one more time. So usually we just end with a piece of advice for anyone that might be struggling with domestic violence. What would you tell them?
I think that is such a hard question. And I get asked that one all the time. And I think it's hard because I remember living in that moment, feeling so discouraged and like nothing was going to work and nothing was going to happen that was going to make it successful. Like I had left once, I had done it and it didn't work. And I remember feeling really discouraged. And it took me a really long time to get to the place where life felt easy. And I'm not going to say that it feels easy now, but one thing that I talk about often is marriage is hard. Remember we talked about that? I think that choosing yourself is something that you should just learn to do in general. Finding someone who wants you to choose yourself, I think, is also really important, because I think that says how they care about you. I think that that says a lot about how they're going to show up in your life. And I think the biggest thing for me that helped me be successful was removing the people that made me doubt my own thoughts, because that was something that I was already doing. And so I almost needed to isolate myself so much. Even though I had come from that, I think I needed to do that to get my feet back on the ground and figure out who I could trust, but I needed to trust myself first. And I think a lot of times when you leave and you feel so out of control, you are trying to grasp and you want people to help you do it because you're broken and you feel like you're nothing. And that's valid. Unfortunately, I think the thing that will make you successful is figuring out how to do it yourself, even though that feels scary. And so I think the thing that helped me was, unfortunately, isolating myself more to just kind of come back to ground zero. Figure out who I was, what opinions I had, what were my opinions versus other people's opinions. And I think it took me blocking everyone else out, because everyone had an opinion on how I should be doing something or how things should be working. And that was really difficult, especially being thrown into the justice system that makes absolutely no sense. I think anyone that has been through that will tell you that. It's not black and white. It is every color under the rainbow. And I remember a lot of people would ask me, well, why are you letting him do that? And I was like, I have tried every possible avenue to not have this be the case. When I was told therapy reintroduction was petty, I tried to fight that. There was nothing I could do. I was told, send your kids or you will be held in contempt. It wasn't anything I was letting him do, but when I'm already struggling with accepting what is being thrown at me, and I just have to accept it, having to explain why he's getting to do that to someone was so hard, and not anything I felt like I needed to do. And so even though everyone's telling you, like, yes, building my community was huge, but I think finding your own voice first would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, just finding that sense of self again. Got to start there first.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really think that this is what especially youth needs to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry that you had to go through all that.
Aspire Counseling Services provides caring, personalized support for adults and teens facing mental health challenges. From group therapy to mindfulness, art, and even pet therapy, their programs are designed to help people feel better and build healthier habits. Teens can get the support they need while still keeping up with school and home life. You can reach Aspire at 888-585-7373. This is a paid message from Amelia Malloy's Angels. Did you know that 1 in 6 couples struggle with infertility, often facing emotional stress and the high cost of treatments? That's where Amelia Malloy's Angels, a nonprofit organization, steps in. Serving Kern County since 2022, Amelia Malloy's Angels provides family grants, comfort kits, and monthly support groups that bring hope, financial assistance, and spiritual care to couples who need it. If you would like to support families walking through infertility, you can become an Angel of Hope with a minimum monthly gift of $25, join their prayer team, or sponsor or host a monthly support group. Visit their website at www.ameliamalloysangels.com.
No sorries.
No sorries. Yeah, you're doing good now. You and your family. I'm so happy for you guys. But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And he's always like,
ta-da!
Yeah.
We
Okay,
did
let me just
it.
do my one little ending real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Shattered Silence. As always, don't forget to follow us on our socials on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You can watch full episodes on YouTube, or you can listen in on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Ta-da!
Now the card throw.
That was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.